So my feeling is that by the time we get to the end of this calendar year, November, December, we likely will know whether we have a safe and effective vaccine or more than one vaccine. There are 3 candidates, including one from the UK, that are being tested right now in the United States in a phase 3 trial. And we hope that by the end of this year, we'll get enough results to be able to make a determination whether it's safe and effective. And then there are 2 or 3 other candidates that are close behind that will go into advanced trials at the end of September, at the end of October. So I think things are looking pretty optimistic about the likelihood of our being successful one way or the other in the next several months.
Is it the case that the vaccine trials that are happening at the University of Oxford, are they the furthest ahead, as it were? Are they sort of leading the pack? And to what extent are then you concerned about the news that that trial has had to be paused?
Well, I wouldn't say they were leading the pack. I would say they were right up there with others. The advantage they had, that they have had tests in South America, in Brazil, and in South Africa, in which there's a lot of infections. So the likelihood that they would have gotten a result reasonably soon is in fact true. So in that respect, you could say they were ahead. The issue now is something that is one of those things that's just the reality of vaccine trials. They ran into a serious adverse event and they did the appropriate thing. They put the trial on hold, which means that there will be no more enrollment until they figure this out.
But
and
I wonder
hopefully,
I wonder if that sort of blunts. Sorry to interrupt, Doctor. I wonder if that blunts your optimism, though, because of course these events could happen. The bumping up into problems could continue to happen, and obviously push that date back a bit.
Well, you know, it doesn't blunt my optimism for the simple reason that this is one of 6 or 7 trials that are ongoing right now. I think it will slow down, hopefully only temporarily, the AstraZeneca trial until they figure it out, and then hopefully they'll be able to proceed. But when you have 6 or 7 candidates and one gets slowed down, the entire field doesn't get slowed down because the others are right on course.
A lot of people are concerned at the speed at which this is progressing. As much as it is great that we're racing towards getting a vaccine, people worry about corners being cut, they worry about safety. What would you say to those people who say right now that they wouldn't accept a vaccine if it were to become available soon?
Yeah, well, I think it's important to point out, and what you just brought up about the hold on the AstraZeneca trial is a good example that we do have good checks and balances, and that's the reason why you go through various phases in a trial. We are going quickly, but it's important to point out that the speed by no means compromises safety, nor does it compromise scientific integrity. The speed is based on the extraordinary advances in technology that have occurred over the last 10 years or so, where we went from just recognizing a new virus in the first week of January to being able to go into a phase 1 trial a couple of months later, and a phase 3 trial only 6 or 7 months later. That is unprecedented.
So you wouldn't be concerned, you personally obviously wouldn't be concerned about taking a vaccine were it to become available. No. Do you think the President of the United States would?
Well, I'm not sure what he would do. I wouldn't want to speak for him, but I can tell you that the process that now
I was just interested in the idea, Dr. Fauci, that it's questionable about whether the President would take the vaccine, perhaps.
Well, I don't know if it's questionable. He might. You just have to ask him.
I'd love to.
I can tell you. Yeah. Well, I'll ask him the next time I see him, if you would like. But the fact is that given the process of the safety and efficacy trials that are going on right now, if, let's say, at the end of this year, November and December, that the regulatory authorities in the United States or in England or in the EU say that a vaccine or more than one vaccine is safe and effective, I can tell you personally, I would not hesitate to take the vaccine, nor would I hesitate to recommend that my family take the vaccine.
We've had a difficult week in the UK when it comes to case numbers increasing. We've seen a daily increase of nearly 3,000 cases a day over the last few, and there's a legal change coming in on Monday to say that gatherings of no more than 6 people are now going to be made illegal in many circumstances. I wonder if you think that that's a sign that the UK perhaps opened up rather too soon.
You know, I think we have to be careful in blaming a decision. You know, we had the same problem in the United States. I'm sure you followed it, where we had a big surges in the northeastern part of the country with the New York metropolitan area, which accounted for almost 50% of all the infections and hospitalizations and deaths in the country. Then their curve came way down. Then the southern states of Florida, Texas, California, and Arizona, they began to do what the UK is doing now. They tried to open up the economy. And maybe they did it a little bit too quickly. Maybe they did it a little bit too aggressively. But we saw a big surge in cases in the southern states that went from maybe 20,000 a day way up to 70,000 a day. So we had the same problem. So the only thing that we recommend now for other countries like the UK is that you've really got to be very prudent and careful as you open up the economy, because if you don't, you're going to start to see the surges that we saw in the United States and that apparently you are seeing right now in the UK.
Do you think then that this is over caution from the UK government, given what we've seen over the last, certainly in March and April time, that they're being more cautious than perhaps might be warranted given the case numbers that exist at the moment, no?
No, I don't think they're being overcautious, but what I think they are doing, at least from what I'm gathering from my side of the pond, is that what they're doing is that they are being now more prudent in saying, we're going to continue to try and open up, but we got to do it much more carefully.
I wonder what you make broadly of how the UK has handled this, because if you look at excess deaths across Europe, the UK unfortunately is almost leading the pack when it comes to the number of the extra number of people who have died as a result of this. How would you characterise the UK's response broadly?
You know, it's very interesting because I get asked that a lot about our response here in the United States almost every day. And you could always have done better. I think what the UK did in the beginning, they thought that perhaps they would go the herd immunity route and let there be infections to try and that didn't work. But they were smart enough to say, wait a minute, we got to reverse our strategy. And then I think they did as well as anyone could expect. It's so easy to criticize retrospectively about what you could have done better. I think if you look at the entire planet and all the different countries, most of countries had a problem that if they look back at it, they say they could have done better. So I'm always reluctant to make any kind of critique of what people could have done. Hopefully, looking forward, they'll do much better.
Well, here's hoping. I mean, the Prime Minister has said that he's been guided by the science during this. And you mentioned about herd immunity and the so-called change of strategy that there was. As speaking as a scientist, as you do, I wonder how good a guide the science has been during this.
You know, the science has been a good guide. What I think people need to appreciate is that we started from knowing nothing about this. This was a brand new virus. And as the weeks and months went by, we got information that was real data and real evidence. And you have to, in real time, act on the information you have.
But that changed views, didn't it? That changed approaches. When it comes to masks or testing or social distancing, the science moved as it knew more, which is understandable.
Well, exactly, and that's my point, because you have to make changes in your policy and your guidelines based on the most recent and well-founded evidence and data. So when the general public, I know the United States public felt the same way, I'm sure in the UK it was similar. When they see changes in recommendations or guidelines, they get confused and say, well, wait a minute, you said this a month ago, why are you saying this now? And the reason is because the evidence is evolving and the evidence is changing, and you have to be flexible enough and humble enough and realizing that you do have to change as the evidence accumulates. And that's what we did in the United States, and I'm sure that's what you're doing in the UK.